Hey guys, let's get more news from Dallas Cowboys, but first don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Negative report on Trey Lance's Cowboys' future emerges. The Dallas Cowboys have several big roster decisions to make during the 2024 offseason. Aside from a possible big money extension for Dak Prescott, the Cowboys must choose whether or not to pick up backup quarterback Trey Lance's fifth-year option. With the price tag for that extra year being finalized this past week, a new report on Lance's future in Dallas has emerged. Mike Fisher of SI Cowboys says Dallas paying him the fifth-year option, is not in the master plan here inside the star. This news arrives on the heels of the fifth-year option price being set at $22.4 million for Lance for the 2025 campaign. Instead, Fisher notes the most likely scenarios involve either hoping Lance does enough in the preseason to garner trade interest, or the two sides agree on a new deal before he hits free agency in 2025 if the option is declined. Prescott being entrenched as starter, and the front office not backing down from its commitment to him, puts Lance in a tough spot. His current ceiling on this roster is only as a backup, and he even has competition there with Cooper Rush serving as QB2 throughout the 2023 season. Paying $22 million for a backup would be ridiculous, so the only way Lance would really be worth the fifth-year option is if he surpasses Prescott, but that seems like a very slim possibility. That leaves Lance likely looking for a new home in 2025. Considering how young he is and his previously high draft stock, the North Dakota State product would surely like at least a chance to prove his NFL worth as a starter, instead of settling for a backup gig. Quarterback Trey Lance will remain with the Dallas Cowboys in 2024 and will receive a $4.25 million roster bonus, per the Dallas Morning News' Calvin Watkins. The roster bonus will give Lance $5.31 million in total compensation for the 2024 season. According to Watkins, Dallas did not consider cutting Lance after he made tremendous strides last year. The Cowboys won't, however, pick up Lance's $22.4 million fifth-year option for the 2025 season, Watkins reported. Lance, the former number 3 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, has played in just 8 games in his career. In 2021 in 6 games, he had 603 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He played in just 2 games in 2022, recording 194 passing yards, before suffering an ankle injury that kept him out the rest of the season. Lance is entering the third year of a 4-year, $34.1 million contract that he signed with the San Francisco 49ers in 2022. Lance was traded to the Cowboys from the 49ers ahead of the 2024 season in exchange for a 4th-round pick. He is the number 3 quarterback on the Cowboys behind Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush, but it seems Dallas is confident in his ability to compete with Rush as the number 2 next year. You may hate him, but the NFL, and Texas, is not what it is today without Jerry Jones. Between the Netflix documentary that is currently in production, with his cooperation, and an in-depth biography that is in the research phase, Jerry Jones is in the legacy part of his career. Set aside your feelings, if you can, about the man, and you may be able to acknowledge his legacy will include the influence he has had not just on a pro football team, but on our world. By buying the Dallas Cowboys in 1989, it granted Jerry a point of entry into the world of sports. Since then he has exploited that entry for personal wealth, while changing sports to fit his ambitions of bigger, and endless profits. Start just with North Texas. It is even close to how it was when I came here in the early 90s. Everybody was broke. The buildings were half empty or the construction was stopped halfway through, Jerry said the day FIFA announced it awarded AT&T Stadium 9 matches for the 2026 World Cup. The banks were all broke. That's what it looked like then. Now we are arguably the greatest place to be young, and that may be from 15 to 89. And it's one of the greatest places on this earth for a future viability and for quality of life. I believe that strongly. He may believe that strongly, but at least some of that statement is slight exaggeration. Jerry never caught a small fish, every fish he caught is a trophy. What is not an exaggeration is that a city/region with no geologic point of sale, i.e. an ocean/beach, a giant lake, mountains, a big canyon, or even casinos has worked its way into the conversation with Miami, LA, NYC, Chicago, and the rest of America's tourist destination cities. North Texas is basically a series of strip malls and cookie-cutter developments plopped in the middle of a prairie. Only through the sheer force of Jerry's tornadic personality, and the help of so many others, has a region whose hook is no state income tax, mild winters and business-friendly laws is a national player. That has been achieved through primarily entertainment, events, and sports. The NFL, football, Dallas, Arlington, Texas, media, and so much of sports look the way they do because of Jerry Jones. His team has not reached a conference title game in more than 20 years, let alone a Super Bowl, but, according to Sportico, the Cowboys are the most valuable franchise in North American sports, at $9.5 billion. Imagine what they would be worth if they won playoff games? Use his arrival to the Cowboys in February of 1989, and the growth rate of the NFL, and all of sports, has far exceeded the pace of most businesses. He did benefit from the explosion of cable television, but his ambition to grow everything spreads across North Texas. He will turn 82 in October, and while he has slowed down compared to when he bought the team, his influence on the Cowboys, the NFL, and North Texas remains significant and everlasting. Cowboys picked as an ideal fit for electric 17-touchdown receiver. While most Cowboys draft prospects appear to those who can help sort out the problems on the offensive line, the fact is, they're going to need a prospect who has a chance to break through as a number 2 wide receiver on the roster. They will have to pay their clear number 1 CeeDee Lamb, and they have 2 uninspiring guys behind him, Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup. So Pro Football Focus is seeing their ideal first-round draft pick going to someone who can take some pressure off of Lamb, rather than a waddling 320-pounder. It makes sense. Gallup is expected to be waived, and Cooks will turn 31 during the season. The receiver PFF thinks would be ideal for the Cowboys is Brian Thomas Jr., the LSU star who went for 1,177 yards receiving and 17 touchdowns, most in the nation, in an explosive offense last year. The advantage that Thomas would have coming into Dallas, PFF noted, is that he has already played the deep threat, number 2 role next to another top-flight receiver, Malik Neighbors, who is also a sure first-rounder in this draft. Here's how PFF's Dalton Wasserman sixed up the impact that Thomas could have next to Lamb. Dallas offense started humming when speedsters Brandon Cooks and Kevonde Turpin threatened safeties enough to give CeeDee Lamb space to operate underneath. Nobody in this draft understands that role better than Brian Thomas Jr. Thomas led the nation in touchdowns last season and was a premier deep threat. He allowed Malik Neighbors to operate anywhere he needed to. A pairing with Lamb would create the same dynamic and allow Dak Prescott to sustain his production after an excellent bounce-back season. Turpin, primarily the Cowboys' return man, was more theoretical threat than reality, posting just 12 catches all season, though 3 of them were for touchdowns. At 5'9", he is not a viable long-term deep threat. Cooks, as mentioned, is getting older. The Cowboys need a field stretcher. Thomas has the speed to notch a 4.3-second 40-yard dash at the combine, and a number like that could well secure a spot in the first round for him. The problem for the Cowboys may be that teams picking above their number 24 slot might be as intrigued by Thomas's potential as an ideal fit as they are. The faster his 40-yard dash time, the more teams will be making note of him. Seattle at number 16 and Jacksonville at number 17 could be problematic. Maybe there will be others. As ESPN draft analyst Matt Miller said, courtesy of On3.com, Thomas could evoke thoughts of Bengals star T. Higgins. I compared him to T. Higgins, but here's the thing. I think he's actually faster than T was coming out of college. There could be some 4.3 ability here, Miller said. He's someone in the top 20. Once we get past those big 3 receivers, I think a lot of teams are gonna fall in love with Brian Thomas Jr. this week. I know I have, watching the tape, so I think general managers are going to do the same because he's an electric vertical threat. And you fan, what do you think of the Brian Thomas Jr. situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.